If you've been working hard trying to build that fit, strong, sexy body, but you feel like no matter what you do, you just can't seem to get results, I'm gonna break down exactly what you're doing wrong and how to fix it in this video. The most important thing is that you know for sure that you have a strategy that works. And the only way to know that your strategy works is number one, to understand the science of your body and how we get results. And then number two, to know how to apply it to your body and your goals so that you have a step-by-step plan that is going to guarantee you produce the fitness results you want. So stay tuned, that's what we're gonna get into in this video. What's going on, Fit Fam? Welcome on back to my channel. My name is Megan Janice, the founder of Nomadic Fitness, and I teach you ladies how to eat more without any restrictions and work out smarter instead of harder so you can build that beautiful, shapely hourglass body that you feel amazing in and can maintain year-round for life with ease. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Come follow me over on Instagram for even more fitness content. And if you're coming on back, thanks so much for joining for another video. Okay, fam, so there are two parts to building the fit, toned, strong, sexy body of your dreams. And that is that you need to build a lot more muscle and you also need to lose body fat. It is the combination of the two. But the big mistake that women are always making is they're only thinking to lose weight or to lose body fat, and they're not paying so much attention to putting the muscle on underneath, when really it's the muscle that is going to make everything smooth, firm, and tight. It's going to give you the shape and definition that you want. Okay, so now that you know what you want to achieve, more muscle gain, not so much body fat, we need a plan to get there. So we're going to talk a lot about food strategy in this video. We're going to be talking about how much you need to eat and how to guarantee that you are eating the right amount to reach those goals of muscle gain and fat loss, and then also when and how to change it and why. But I also want to say a big part of building this muscular lean body is not just about food, it is also about training. It's about how you work out, and this is another area I see a lot of women making big mistakes with, is that they're only using really small dumbbells at home, or they are going to classes. They're not really making their body get strong. And that is what you need to do in order to get that muscular physique. You need to be actually giving your muscles a reason to grow, aka getting stronger over time, lifting those challenging weights. So definitely it's ideal for you to go to an actual gym at least 3 or 4 times a week and really push your muscles hard, make every single set, every single rep count, push your muscles to your maximum capability, and I promise when you train like that, you are going to see results. Now, if you can't go to the gym, you really want to get yourself some dumbbells, a barbell, and a rack to use at home, because then you'll at least have enough equipment to train hard enough at home without having to go to a gym. But definitely this 5-10 pound dumbbells at home is not going to cut it. You need to set yourself up with proper equipment. Okay, so that's the training side. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you want to know more about how to lift weights properly, how to get really strong, and how to get a really shapely, sexy hourglass body, then you can go check out my video here where I go through some of my workouts and explain what you need to pay attention to when you're lifting to get those results. So what we're going to dive into is the food side of it. How much food is enough for you to see the results that you want? How much do you need to eat? So notice I'm saying how much. It is way more important about the quantity of food than it just is what you eat. And this is also where a lot of women go wrong, is they're like, okay, I'm just going to eat really clean, really healthy, never have anything bad. And they're doing that for months, years, and they never see any results. And that's because it's not enough just to eat healthy. It's really about the ratios and amounts of food that you're having that are going to determine how much muscle and how much body fat you have. The ratios I'm talking about is called macros, or macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbs. And you need all three. You just need them in different amounts. And the biggest mistakes that most people are making is usually people who are fitness conscious know that they need to eat protein, but a lot of the time they're usually under eating carbs and over eating fat. So why do we need each of these three? Well, protein is the building block of muscle. You really will not be able to build muscle if you're not getting in your protein. And the other thing is that protein helps to keep you fuller and satiated for long periods of time. So it definitely will also help you with fat loss. Now, fats are important because they help regulate your hormones, but the problem with fat is that it is really easy to overeat fat. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, whereas 1 gram of carbs and protein is only 4 calories. And the thing is, fats taste delicious. It's things like butter, oil, cheese. And so especially when you go to eat out, you're gonna find there's so much oil, so much butter and stuff because they want you to think that it tastes good, but then the problem is you're just eating way too much of it. So fats is usually the one to be mindful of, to not be way overeating, and that is definitely what most people are doing, unfortunately. Now, carbs is the one that is by far the most understood, and it's really where I see women seriously under eating, and that is also why they are not getting the results they want, including myself in the past. Now, the reason that carbs are important is because carbs translate into your fuel for performance in the gym. And like I said at the start of this video, if you want to get that shapely, firm, toned, snatched hourglass body, however you want to describe it, that is a muscular body. And you cannot build muscle if you hardly eat, right? Yes, you need enough protein to also build the muscle, but the carbs go so close hand in hand. And in some ways, it can be even more important because how you train and how much you really stimulate your muscles in the gym is what is going to translate into the muscle growth you see. And if you are not eating that many carbs, you're not going to have the energy to train hard in the gym. Carbs also fill up your muscles. So that's why when you're eating actually more carbs and you're training properly, you're gonna get that nice, full, plump, filled out look. Especially, we're talking lower body ladies. That's what's gonna give you those sculpted legs and nice poppin' glutes. And actually, my biggest transformation happened when I significantly increased my carb intake. This was me back in the day when I was training hard, lifting heavy in the gym. So in a lot of ways, I was doing that part right, but I was just not eating enough. In particular, it was not enough carbs. I was getting 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, and then I was hitting my other macros. It's just that I was only ever eating like 1700 calories a day, which for me to really build some muscle was definitely not enough. Versus here I am just 1 year later with a completely different physique. And the crazy part is that I weigh exactly the same in both, except this time I finally got the snatch sculpted physique that I wanted. And the difference wasn't my protein, it was my carbs. I went from eating around maybe 175 grams of carbs a day to up to as much as 300 grams of carbs to get this transformation. The other thing was that I learned how to cycle between different phases that are focused on muscle gain versus focused on losing body fat. And then understanding I had to spend the vast majority of my time focusing on muscle gain, which meant being in a moderate calorie surplus instead of always thinking fat loss, which meant being in a calorie deficit. And again, that's where I see women going wrong all the time. The vast majority of my clients also were in that position. For example, this is my client Bethany, who came in working out, 6 days a week, but she was just kind of doing random workouts with light dumbbells at home. And then the other thing was she was always eating low calorie. She was eating like 1500 calories a day. And despite all that effort, she really just felt kind of mushy and flabby. Versus here, we ended up taking our calories all the way up to 2,200 calories a day. We brought her workouts down to just 4 times a week, but we got her in the gym lifting challenging weights, and she really pushes herself hard in her workouts. She doesn't do that much. She's in and out in pretty much 45, 60 minutes. But the fact that she was eating enough got her calories higher, especially the carbs, and then learned how to train properly is why she ended up getting this jaw-dropping transformation. And you can too if you follow along with the steps I'm gonna share. Okay, so what are the macros that you should eat? Well, what a lot of people will do to try to figure out the right amount of food for them is they will go online and use a calorie calculator or a macro calculator. And I actually used to do this back in the day because I didn't know any better. The problem with this is a calculator is going to ask, okay, what's your age, height, weight, activity level? And then it's gonna say, okay, this is how much you should eat based on those stats. But the problem is the calculator has no way of knowing that that is actually what makes sense for your body. The only way to for sure know how your body's adapted and how your body is responding is to actually track the data of your own body. So for example, just for the purposes of this video, I went and put my stats into an online calculator, and it told me that my maintenance was around 2,000 calories a day. Well, guess what? I'm actually over 2 months into a calorie deficit right now, doing a cutting phase, and my cutting calories are 2,000 calories a day, meaning I am actively losing weight on 2,000 calories versus this calculator told me that I would maintain my weight on 2,000 calories a day. Last year, calculator, I was able to get my maintenance calories up to about 2,400 calories a day. So right now I'm cutting on 2,000 calories, and this calculator told me that if I wanted to lose body fat, I should drop my calories to 1,600 a day. So can you imagine if I followed this calculator and I was only eating 1,600 calories a day versus I'm eating 2,050 right now and I'm losing weight? That is a big difference, especially when you're cutting and you already have to be pretty diligent with your food. The difference between 2,000 and 1,600 is really big. And the more food you can eat, not only is it easier for you to adhere to and it makes your life just more enjoyable, but also the more food you can eat, the better you can do in the gym. You have more energy to perform, more energy to recover, and ultimately the more food you're eating, the more muscle you're going to be able to gain. So definitely you always want to be eating as much as you can while still achieving the goals that you want. So instead of using a macro calculator, what I want you to do is figure out your custom macros for your body. So the way you're going to do this is you're going to track everything that you eat for the next 7 days. Track every little bit in an app like MyFitnessPal. And then what you're going to do at the end of the week is you're going to add up all 7 of those days and find the average. So add up the total of the 7 days, divide it by 7, and then see what the average is. Now I'm going to walk you through an example of how you would set your macros from this. So let's say you tallied up the 7 days and you ended up finding your average intake was 1,700 calories. Well, I'd say off the bat, you probably could add in another 100 calories on top of this, and I'll explain why in a moment. It's because you're going to do something called a reverse diet. We're going to be slowly working up your metabolism. And of course, this is assuming that you're also hitting the gym, you're training hard, or at least training hard with the equipment you have at home, getting yourself adequate weight to use. So let's just say we're bumping you up to 1,800. Okay, so what we're going to do first is figure out what your protein target should be. So generally, women should be having somewhere between 120 to 150 grams of protein per day. The closer to 1 pound of body weight in protein, the better. But let's say you're a woman who weighs 200 pounds right now. You do not need to be eating 200 grams of protein because a lot of the weight you have is going to be from excess body fat instead of weight that is muscle. So we really only need to be actually feeding your muscle. And if you're putting too many calories to protein, we're actually taking away from the fats and carbs, which we don't want because that will affect your performance in the gym. So let's say you are maybe an 140 pound woman. So we're just going to say your protein is 140 grams a day. Okay, so we're going to leave that there and set it aside. Now what we're going to do is find your fat target. So your fat should usually be somewhere between 25 to 30% of your intake. This is the only one that you're going to think of as a percentage. You don't think of your protein and carbs as a percentage, just your fat. Okay, so since your total calories is 1,800, what you're going to do is you're going to multiply that by, let's say, 0.3. We're going for the 30%. We get 540 calories to fat. We know that 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, so what we're going to do is divide that by 9, and we get 60 grams of fat. Okay, that's a really good amount of fat to be having. It's not too little and it's not too much. Okay, so now what we need to do to find the carbs is going to be whatever calories are left over after you figured out what calories go to fats and protein. So every gram of protein is 4 calories, and also every gram of carbs is 4 calories. Okay, we said your protein was 140 grams a day, so we're gonna take 140, multiply that by 4, and we get 560 calories. And then we had 540 calories from fat. So 540 plus 560 gives us 1,100 calories. Okay, so now we're gonna take 1,800, your total calories, and subtract 1,100. We're left over with 700 calories, and every gram of carbs is 4 calories, so we're gonna divide it by 4. We get 175 grams of carbs. Okay, so that's a really good starting amount. 175 grams of carbs, 60 grams of fat, 140 grams of protein, 1,800 calories altogether. Okay, so now what you need to start doing is tracking your macros in an app like MyFitnessPal. And you want to actually hit these macros. A lot of people talk about how they track macros, but they don't actually hit them, right? One day they're like 20 grams over on fat and 30 grams under on protein. That is not hitting your macros. You need to actually make sure you are consistent with the data, because that is the only way that you will know how your body's responding to what you're doing. So what you want to do is you want to hit those numbers within 5 grams plus or minus. And you want to do this at least 5 days of the week, meaning you still have 1 or 2 days where you can have a cheat meal. So you can just go enjoy what you want, not worry about it, not try to track it. But outside of that, you're on point and you are hitting these macros. Okay, now let's talk about one of the big mistakes that people do at this point is they never change their macros macros. They find what their starting macros are and then they never make any adjustments. This is a big mistake because if you want to get a really significant transformation, you are going to have to change your macros a lot of the time, somewhere between like 15 to 30 times. And that is because, remember, at the start of the video, we talked about the fit body you want to have is a body with lots more muscle and not that much body fat. And that means you need to cycle through the different phases of building your body. So some of the time you're going to be focused on muscle gain, some of the time you're going to be focused on fat loss. Now, the very first thing that I would recommend really anyone do at this point is a reverse diet. So the point of a reverse diet is to gradually increase the amount of food you eat so that your metabolism will adapt and your body's going to start to burn more calories. And the reason you would want to do this is just because why would you not want your maintenance level to be as high as possible? You want to be burning as many calories as you can on autopilot so that you can eat as much as possible, lose as much fat as possible, and build as much muscle as possible, and also just have as much energy as possible. So the way that you would reverse diet is adding in somewhere between 50 to 100 calories every 1 to 2 weeks. Now again, make sure you're really training hard, staying consistent in the gym, keeping track of your workouts and trying to improve every single week. And of course, that you're keeping track of your macros and keeping track of your body's data. Because essentially what you see happening with your photos and with the scale weight is also what is going to determine when and how you are going to be adjusting your macros. So let me give you some examples. Let's talk about somebody who has a lot of body fat to lose, who's overweight. So for example, this is one of my clients, Valerie, who has lost over 40 pounds working with me, doing a reverse diet and then going into a fat loss phase before, once again, reverse dieting out of her fat loss phase. So she's somebody who came into the program who obviously had quite a lot of weight to lose, but she was only eating about 1,500 calories a day when she started. So it didn't make sense for me to right away start dropping her calories because then she would have had very little room to work with. She would have been pretty much on starvation calories before long. So what did we do instead? We first did a reverse diet. We first worked on getting her macros consistent, getting her training properly in the gym, and bringing her up bit by bit. And as we brought her up, we got her all the way up to 2,300 calories a day, and she actually was losing weight in this process. So a lot of the time that can happen because your body is adapting. It is starting to burn more calories. It is becoming more efficient. Now, this won't necessarily happen for everybody, but that's okay. You don't necessarily need to do a reverse diet to lose weight. The goal is that it will help you to lose weight in the long term because when you go to the next phase, your calorie deficit, you will have a lot more room to drop your calories from. So that's what happened with her. Once we got to around 2,300 calories a day, the scale was starting to plateau a little bit, but she still had more weight to lose. So then that is when we started to do her cut, her calorie deficit, aka focusing on fat loss. So we went from 2,300 down to around 2,000 calories the vast majority of the time until towards the end, the lowest we had to go was 1,700. And in that time, she lost a total of 40 pounds. And then what we did was once again, reverse her out of her deficit so she could maintain her results at a higher intake. And now she's been eating well over 2,000 calories a day, maintaining the 40 pounds down because she did this whole process of being consistent with macros, consistent with training hard, and then us knowing when and how to adjust her macros to guide her through these different phases. Now let's talk about somebody who is not overweight, somebody who is more skinny, maybe slightly skinny fat, but you want to get more snatched, have bigger popping glutes, more defined abs, all the things. You want a more hourglass body. Well, what's going to happen with you is you most likely will not have to do a cut first. You can probably hold off doing a cut for quite a while. And instead, you're going to start with a reverse diet, just like anyone else, and then you're going to move into a build phase. So this is the opposite. This is where you're in a calorie surplus because you're trying to gain muscle, right? So these are opposite strategies. Calorie surplus for muscle gain, calorie deficit for fat loss. And then after you spend some time gaining some weight because you're skinny and you're actually trying to put on that muscle, meaning you need to gain some weight and it's ultimately going to make you look better because you're putting on all that muscle. After you've done that for a little while and you get to a point where maybe you're starting to feel a little fluffy, feeling a little squishy, you want to trim down some of that fluff, that is when you can go and do a calorie deficit, do your cut, lose a little bit of fluff, and reveal all that sexy muscle that you've built underneath. But by the time you go to do that fat loss phase, it's going to be so simple for you because you got your calories really high that you don't even need to drop that far to be able to lose body fat. So I'm going to share my client Summer with you here. She's a perfect example of this. She came into coaching and we ended up finding out that she was averaging only about 1,800 calories a day and she was skinny. You know, she maybe had a little bit more squish than she wanted, but she certainly wasn't overweight. So what do? We got to work training hard in the gym and bringing her initially through the reverse diet, bringing up her calories, and eventually that turned into a build. So you'll know it becomes a build instead of a reverse diet when you actually start to actively gain weight. Now, you don't want to be gaining weight too quickly because you don't want to gain too much body fat. It really should be moderate. And for a woman, I think you should be gaining somewhere between 1 to 2 pounds a month in your build. That is kind of the sweet spot where it's going to be putting on muscle without gaining too much body fat. So that's exactly what we did with Summer. She ended up gaining about 15 pounds over time in her build, and by the time we were done her build, she was at 2,700 calories a day, and she was looking so much better, so much more snatched, so much more hourglassy. And then at this point, just to trim down and lose a little bit of fluff to be in prime bikini season, we went into the calorie deficit, into the fat loss phase. So then she was able to cut mostly around 2,000 calories a day. At the absolute lowest, we went down to 1,800, and then she was able to lose about 10 pounds in this process, and she had so much to reveal underneath. She had completely transformed her body by eating way more food and knowing how to cycle through these different phases. Okay, Fit Fam, so I know that this is a lot of information. I get that it is maybe confusing and overwhelming to try to piece it all together. So that is why we offer one-to-one coaching, so that you don't have to figure this all out on your own. You don't have to guess and wonder what you should be doing. We literally will customize a tailored plan for you, the exact macros, the exact workouts to do, reviewing how you do your exercises to make sure you're getting the most out of your time in the gym, and guiding you through these different phases of building, cutting, and reversing to get this dramatic transformation and totally change your physique once and for all and be able to maintain it on high calories. So if you're interested, you can apply for coaching. The link is in the description, and we would love to have a chat with you to see if it's a good fit. All right, fam, thanks so much for checking out this video. And next, I want you to go watch this one here, where I'm going to walk you through what a current day of eating and a day in the life in general looks like for me while I'm cutting, what I'm eating, how I'm training, so you can follow along to see what I'm doing to get results. I'll see you in that video.